which means I can't hear a thing that's coming from final control. So for those of you that are asking questions, I'm not ignoring you. I'm just in a little bit of a tricky spot right now. There's also a considerable amount of chatter on the Game Drive channel. We are going to have to leave her at some point because there are other vehicles interested in joining us at this sighting. There we go, you can see how the wind is bugging her. She's still a little bit unsettled. Oh, Justin, you've asked a question about something to do with leopards and fur. Good morning to you. I'm afraid I have absolutely no idea what you're asking about the leopards and the fur because I can't hear you terribly well. Hold on one second. Let's see if we can't make a plan here. No. We're in a tricky spot. Sorry, my pom-pom's getting in the way. Oh, it's nothing about animals' fur. In fact, it was what animals do they prefer. Well, Justin, it depends on the size of the leopard, it depends on the sex. So the female leopards of Tundi size will go for things anywhere ranging between Dacre, Steenbok, and then Impala as well, especially when the Impala are distracted in the rutting season. For something larger like Tingana, he can go for things like Kudu, Warthog. Generally, female leopard try not to pick a fight with warthogs. They do occasionally, and they're more than capable of catching them. It's just they don't want to risk any kind of injury to themselves. It is an interesting thing about leopards, and even more fascinating than that is the fact that they actually, individual leopards seem to have individual preferences, or at least they have areas of speciality. So Tingana, for example, seems to be very good at hunting things that live in tunnels or in burrows. He very often catches warthog. I mean, we've had several warthog kills with him in the last few months, and apparently before I started working here, he also had earned a reputation as something of an aardvark killer, catching a tunneling aardvark. Some leopards actually learn to be sort of exist off scavenging kills from other predators. They're opportunists. Very, very clever ones. Both Karula and Shadow have made short work of a couple of male impala since they've been so distracted. And while Tundi decides which way she's going to go and I try and work out where on earth I am in order to assist others into the sighting, let's go back to James and his big cat.
Now, Brian and I were just saying that we think that's a very good idea that you come back here, mainly because for a lion sighting in the middle of the day, this is high action. He is now going to, well, I'm not going to describe what he's going to do, I'm going to let you just watch. Because he will be around here, I suspect, for the rest of the day, somewhere around here, but he's going to go to sleep at some stage. So while that leopard is being a little bit difficult moving through the bushes, we'll watch the much more nocturnal version of the cats. Now, I have been struck over the last few months by how much the leopards move during the day, how much hunting they do during the day, versus lions, for example, which tend to be almost completely asleep for most of the day. Leopards, I think, are much more diurnal than we think they are, and I think you'll find that in areas where there is pressure from human encroachment and from other predators, they will avoid the kind of movement of other predators. So, in this area, we know that the lions and the hyenas move around at night much more than they do during the day. I think that means that the leopards here are more diurnal than we think they are. And I also think that if you go to somewhere like the Cape, for example, we were chatting yesterday about the penguin-eating leopards of the Southern Cape, and certainly a friend of mine who lives on the Southern Cape coast had a leopard walk through her garden the other day. Those leopards are probably vastly more nocturnal because the number of nocturnal predators in the area are that much smaller, but the human beings, of course, are very active during the day. And I think that's why the likes of Karula and Tundi and Shadow, often you'll find their tracks moving in the daytime. He looked almost like he was going to stand up there, but I think it would become much too much effort. But the impala have just seen him. The impala are over there behind us. They've just spotted him, and they're deeply, deeply concerned by his presence, as so they should be. And Joey, that ties in with your question about whether or not he would eat the baby buffalo from yesterday, and the answer is absolutely. He would devour it, and were he to come across it on his own, there would be very little that those other buffalo could do, but for that big buffalo bull that was with the baby buffalo yesterday. He would take great displeasure at viewing a lion like this, and he might chase the lion off, but easily a lion like this could take a little buffalo. Do you see his claws stuck out there, Brian? See, he's pushed his claws out. He's just cleaning in between them, biting his nails. He's probably just feeling a bit nervous. The crack of a branch off to the left-hand side of your screen indicating the presence of elephants. And the elephants, of course, if they find this fellow, will be very unimpressed. Elephants are not impressed by elephants. By lions, sorry. Kirsten, don't laugh at me. It's not funny. My lack of ability to speak. Well, we've had a rather good morning, I'd say, on the cat front. A great return. MJ, nice question from you. You say, how much venison does a lion need to eat in order to maintain his figure? Well, he is able, I'm going to work this out for you, but he is able to eat up to 20% of his body mass. Now, this lion is a pretty average-sized male lion, small to average, and so he probably weighs in the region of 180 kilograms. Now, I will work this out in pounds once I've done it in kilos. I'm not going to do it all the way in kilos. 180 pounds, 20% of that is about... it is 35 kilograms, so you can say 80 pounds. Around about 80 pounds of meat he can eat in just about one sitting. Now that, if he ate one meal of 80 pounds of prime cut venison, MJ, I think you'd find that it would last him for at least 4 days before he became very hungry again. So let's say, and he wouldn't have to eat again, I'd say, let's say 80 kilograms, or 80 pounds of venison per week, plus minus. Okay? Ooh, don't know if you can hear that. Elephants going, ooh, ooh, ooh. Ooh, the elephant's going ballistic down south of where we are now. That's the left-hand side of your screen. Look at his hair blowing in the wind. Isn't that nice? Morning. No problem. And Deborah, armchair traveller, you say he's having a good hair day. I think he's having an exceptional hair day, Brian. You, of course, have got wonderful hair. How would you describe his hair compared with yours?
A close second to mine.
A close second.
But magnificent nevertheless.
Yes, I agree. He has much better hair than me, everybody. I don't have any hair at all. See, he keeps looking where he's been looking the whole time, and I don't know if he can hear a lion or if it's the fact that he can hear... Ooh, here we go. It might be that he can hear those elephants. I think he's heard something else through here. Let's see. We will follow him. It's a Birmingham boy, yeah. Little bit, yeah. He's the one they call number 3. And he's got that very, he's got a very poor pom-pom on his tail. He's going to go straight onto the road there. This game path pops out on the road just down there. Hold on, everybody. Here we go. It's just moving through there to the right-hand side. And I'm going to assume that he's going to pop out here, because to drive through this block will be a heaving nightmare. No, he's just over there. No, Sean, the only thing that a lion is scared of is elephants and bigger male lions, and perhaps a massive, massive group of hyenas. Otherwise, they are afraid of nothing. And nothing will eat them, except other lions, and maybe hyenas might eat them as well. That's quite a nice view of him walking through the bush there on the game path. And of course the cats, a bit like us, they like to walk where it's easy to walk, so they often use roads. There he comes. I just wonder if he's not heard something up here. Maybe there's a female in here somewhere. When we first stopped and he looked up, I heard, "Oh," which sounded to me like another lion. It could have been the wind blowing through a particularly sort of stiff piece of branch somewhere, but he'll come out. There's some clearings just up ahead of where he's walking now. You can still see him there. I'm going to wait here. There's a gap in the road here. Yeah, did he? Ryan says he sat down, everyone. He may have just had a scratch. Is he lying down? Got him. Ah, yes. That's quite a nice shot. We will go in there and try and get a closer look, everyone, but just have a look there. And if you're walking through the bush, I always like to do this. If you're walking through the bush, that is the kind of thing you're looking out for. Now, our view with the naked eye is probably not that dissimilar to the view you have there. And you can imagine walking through the bush how easy it would be to go straight past a fellow like that, especially if he just ducked his head down, which is what he would do if he saw you coming by on foot. Justin, a very salient question from you. You say, have I ever been stalked by a lion? Justin, to my knowledge, I haven't, but then you wouldn't really know, would you? You do hear stories, and I mean, certainly there was during my training. You know, I've told you about the fact that we had to do these unarmed walks. I'm just going to try and find an easy way in here. We had to do those unarmed walks where we had to walk the reserve unarmed, which may sound like an insane activity if you don't know the area very well, but it isn't. But one of the guys who was training at a reserve near where I was, was doing his unarmed walks, and he wasn't very aware of what was going on around him, and apparently a lioness did start to stalk him, and he didn't realize, and a game drive came around the corner, saw the lion, saw him, and drove him between them, and he got on the car, and it was fine. I mean, I don't think the lion was very close to him, but it freaked him out completely, and he left the bush 2 days later. He wasn't able to come back and work here. So it does happen. What would have happened at the end of that story, I don't know. I'm very pleased that the game drive was there, but that was the end of his career. All right, we're going to try and find what's going on here. Let's go and find out what's happening with Thandi and Jimmy.
Phew! So Thandi's led us on a relatively merry dance, and we've actually left the sighting for now. We've pulled out of the sighting. I don't want to risk damaging the vehicle any further. I don't want to risk upsetting her at all. And it just got incredibly, incredibly dense in there. Plus, there's also several other vehicles that would like to come and see her. So now that I've guided a couple of people in, it's time for us to leave. We've had our time with her. It was awesome. And I think we're done for now. Now let's go across towards the Cheetah Plains, or the plains part of Cheetah Plains, and see what we can spot there, since we're already on a roll. How's the camera doing there, Viam? Is it still in one piece?
Yeah, I'm checking it now.
Yes, I nearly took my head off, I nearly took VM's head off, I nearly took the light off, the VR rig pole. We acquired a passenger at one point that was wedged under the steering bar, and I'm relatively certain at some point I'm going to be changing a tyre. But other than that, all is well on the back of Rusty. Whew. Just a couple of leaves. That was fun though. It was a thoroughly entertaining way to spend a morning. There's certainly never a dull moment out here. I think I'm about to bump into their sighting again, but let's try and go around and head through to Cheetah Plains. Let's go back across to James and his lion.
There's the line, everybody. Just excuse a bit of scratching audio. I'm changing my hat. There we go. Can you still hear me, Brian?
Okay.
Oh, wonderful. The lion has done what all lions do at this time of the day, and that is go fast asleep. All cats, I suspect Tundi doing the same. And just look, walking in front of him, two Franklins. They were very cross earlier. They were going, bzzz, chick, bzzz. There. Connie, a very nice question from you, and the answer is both. You say, does prey alarm call to warn each other, or to say to the predator, I've seen you? Connie, it's for both reasons. And absolutely they do it to warn each other, and they also want to say to a predator like this, we see you, don't come any closer. And normally it works. You know, like a leopard or a lion, if they're spotted by impala, they normally give up on their chase. A wild dog is something completely different, and unsurprisingly, therefore, they don't alarm call at wild dogs, they just run. Another Franklin. He's hearing all sorts of things, this lion. I don't know what he's hearing. Oh, that's a nice shot. Watch me miss it. Isn't that nice? That's such a cool shot of him with his nose up to the wind. Oh, I think that's lovely. I really think that's so special. Oh, right, Tundi is back with Jamie. Let's go and look.
We've just bumped into Tundi again. What wonderful luck. We're going to have one last view of her. I'm not even really meant to be in this sighting, but I accidentally found myself here. So we're just going to go forward a little bit. One last view of her before she disappears. Oh, there she is. Well done, Vian. And off she goes. So we won't be trying to follow her into this drainage line. I just asked them if I could join them very briefly and then come past. So our last view of Tundi, off she goes into the drainage line and towards the dam known as Djuma Dam. Morning traffic as a result of a leopard. Definitely the best kind of traffic. So while we negotiate this current situation, back across to James and his big cat.
I think this is the most stunning picture, everybody. The winter grass, the lion with his face to the risen sun. Isn't he lovely? Cold because they're not doing anything. This chap is regally staring about his domain. The colours are all beautiful, and of course the wind blowing around him is making a really sort of not quite eerie but expectant atmosphere. It's really lovely. Now, Law Anthony, you ask a very nice question about how big cats change their habits when we follow them, and do they change their habits? How do they tolerate it? Law Anthony, we don't know. We do to a certain extent. We don't think they change their habits at all. But there is no question in my mind that having a vehicle moving like our vehicles do around them, especially given the noise that they make, I have no doubt in my mind that they hear us, that the noise of our vehicles and the smell of our vehicles affects their ability to know what's going on around them, but they don't seem to change their behavior much as a result of that. And I think they become very used to it, and I don't think that, I don't think we affect their lives hugely, but they absolutely, they become habituated to it. So initially, if you see one of these lions for the first time, he'll be very kind of, not nervous, but he'll be very weary of you and probably watch you a lot more. These days, because they've become so used to us, when you drive through the bush following them, they don't tend to react in the slightest. They just get on with it, which I think is remarkable. Hello, Kevin in Oxford in the United Kingdom. Lovely to hear from you. Thank you for getting hold of us. Kevin, you want to know why, if they are the top of the food chain, why it is that they are, why their numbers are decreasing. Kevin, it's simply because human beings are the great encroachers. They are the top predators in the area in which they live. So in protected areas, they're the top predators. But Kevin, they are by no means the top predators in the world. We are the top predators in the world. We dominate areas. And where we encroach, so these lions decrease. They cannot live in harmony with human beings, unfortunately. And so, it's purely their reduction in numbers is purely a function of the fact that their habitats have been encroached on by human beings. So it's got nothing to do with disease, it's got nothing to do with other predators in the areas where they live. It's got purely to do with the fact that they have conflict with human beings. And there are 7 billion human souls on this planet, well, give or take 10 or 12 million, and or 10 or 20 million, and there are only 20,000 lions left. And so, you can just imagine the sort of pressure. And at one stage, the lion was the most widely spread carnivore in the world. That certainly isn't the case anymore, and it's purely because of human beings. I think he's a lovely fellow, isn't he? I hope he looks up at us again. But I think he's probably going to do his sleeping thing now. Lions are exceptional sleepers. Much better than Brian is at sleeping. Brian's very bad at sleeping, aren't you, Brian? Yes. Well, we've been very lucky with the cats of late. And hopefully that luck will continue. Kim, a nice one from you all the way from Miami. You say if a lion spots a kill, would they chase after it and eat it, or would they just leave it if they were full? Most of these cats are completely opportunistic, which means that if the chance to kill something arises, then they will almost certainly take it. And so if something, say an impala was to wander past here and it was a particularly gormless version of an impala and didn't realize that there was a lion around, he would jump on it, no question. if it was, and the reason for that is because, you know, they are opportunistic. They'll take whatever they can. And you hear stories, for example, of wildebeest being introduced to an area, unconditioned to lions, and they're released from the holding pen or the quarantine area. The lion pride will come into the area, kill 5 or 6 of them, eat 3 and leave the rest, because they're just, you know, there's no real point, or they can't eat anymore, they're unable to eat anymore. So they're completely opportunistic killers, and they'll kill as often as they possibly can. However, now let's say a buffalo walked past down the road here and he was full. He'd weigh that up. Buffalo's difficult to kill, he's not very hungry, so he probably wouldn't go for it. But if something stumbled upon him and didn't realize, yes, then he'd absolutely smash it. I think we're going to spend another 3 minutes or so here, and then we'll press on and see what else we can find. Because I don't think he's going to do anything further than he's done now. Hello, Felicity in New Zealand. Nice from you. You say, do they have antibacterials and things in their saliva and deodorant in their saliva like domestic cats, which will help them to sort of keep disease-free and sweet-smelling? Felicity, they do certainly have antibacterial things in their saliva. It's why they lick their sores and their injuries so profoundly all the time. When they are sore, but to say deodorant, I think, would be to go a little bit far. Certainly, a lion is a smelly creature, and I've never been past one that doesn't smell smelly. So I don't think it deodorizes. No. In the same way, you know, domestic cats that I know, I've always felt have smelt quite catty, and especially as they get a bit older. So, Felicity, yes, many of the same kinds of properties that the saliva of domestic cats have. Deodorant, not so much, but I would say certainly antibacterials. And I think that they clean themselves so fastidiously of blood. Lions less so than leopards and cheetah, but they clean themselves so fastidiously after they've eaten, after they've killed, because, of course, the chances of getting a disease if you're covered in gore are very high. So you can get quite sick if you're covered in muck. And Suzanne, nice one from you in Australia. You say, what's the average sleeping time of a lion in the daytime? You know, up to 20 hours. It really is astounding how long these chaps can sleep. I don't think it's always 20 hours, but it can be up to 20 hours, certainly, Suzanne. I mean, that's a long time. That's most of the day, isn't it, Brian? I don't even know many people who can sleep. I do know a few people who can sleep for that long, but not many. And, I mean, it also depends on what he's doing. Is he hungry? Is he marking territory? What's he doing with his life? And at the moment, this fellow, he looked pretty well fed, but he hasn't just eaten. And he's probably... You know, they're often alone, these Birmingham chaps. It's normally 2 of them together, always, and then 1 and 1. Sometimes all 4 together, but very seldom these days. And so he is probably one of those 2 loners. And this is the sort of territorial march that we've caught him at the end of. I heard a male lion calling this morning. Maybe it was him. And he's now come to the end of his territorial march. And he's going to snooze here, I think, for much of the rest of the day. Right, shall we press on from here? I think while we are waiting to see what happens here, we're not going to wait, we're going to press on. Jamie's found something rather more interesting to show you.
Oh, we've got a lovely sighting of a couple of huge bulls around 3 in a row pan. Because it's so windy, I'm just keeping some distance between us. We're not going to keep it that way. I'm just waiting for our big must bull to move out onto the road, and then we'll go and catch up with them. I've just noticed something on our bonnet. I've only just seen it now. Vim, can you get the little tracks on the bonnet there? Let me try and move my head. Look at that. Something came bouncing through in the dust last night. It's a squirrel. Those three little tracks, or 3 little toes, all close together in the front of the track. It's a little squirrel track. You can see where it slipped slightly in the dust. How cool is that? Somebody has been paying us a visit. Tiny, tiny little tracks. They're probably about this big.
They steal the apples we leave in the cars.
Ah, after Vim's breakfast snacks. Oopsie. Okay, let's go catch up with something a little bit larger than our squirrels that steal apples from the cars. You can't see it from where you are, but I can actually see where it stopped and turned and jumped from the tracks, where it slipped. Its feet have slipped on the dust. And a very good morning to Nelson, who is one of our newer viewers and was wondering about how close we can get to the animals without feeling threatened. Depends on the animal, it depends on the individual, and it depends on their mood at that particular time of day. So what we're doing constantly is a sort of an observation of their body language. So I know as soon as we started the car, the big musk bull who's been walking behind the other elephants stopped and gave us that backward glance over his shoulder. So immediately that tells me that he wants a little bit of extra space. Now on a day like today, it's incredibly windy, which always unsettles everything else out here. So you give them a bit more space than you would on a normal day, on a still day. But that being said, he's thirsty. His desire for water is the predominant thing that's dictating his behavior. And if we stop, we're just going to stop here. We're going to watch them from here, because if I go around to the other side, then I'm not going to have any kind of an escape route if he does decide to get upset with us. That being said, Nelson, each and every single one of these animals has grown up from very, very young with the presence of safari vehicles. So we're fortunate in that they're all incredibly habituated to us. And whilst we certainly interact with them on some level, there's no way that we can claim that we don't have an impact on the animal, that they don't acknowledge us or see us. There's nothing out here that wants to hurt us or attack us. It's just a matter of reading their behavior and being as respectful as possible. Now, the elephant is the undisputed, especially a big bull elephant like the ones we've got in front of us, undisputed kings of our jungle. And it's important that we treat them as such. Tasha, you were wondering if the elephants, kind of like horses, can sense whether or not you are afraid. Yes, I'm absolutely certain that they do. And particularly with bull elephants, it's not really a message that you want to send to them, because the male elephants can be quite keen on asserting their dominance at times. So you don't really want to provoke them in any way. I feel that they read fear. I think most of the time it doesn't bother them. But it is an important aspect of the way in which you handle sightings. And sometimes we get bull elephants that are very curious and that want to come right up to the car and have a good sniff, maybe even at times touch the vehicle. And it's a personal preference. I never let them touch our vehicles. But it's very important in those situations to make sure that you maintain control. The worst thing that can ever happen in the bush is that somebody panics. And that's one of the reasons why I don't let elephants touch the vehicle, because I know Vim. I know that he has nerves of steel and he absolutely knows what he's doing in the bush. But if you have a vehicle full of passengers, some of whom have never seen an elephant before, having an elephant right up close, speaking from experience, does bring home just how large they really are. And you can't predict people's responses. You can predict an elephant's behavior, but you cannot predict what the people on the vehicle are going to do. So I don't want the elephants learning that it's okay to touch the vehicles, because it might not be my vehicle next time. It might be someone with a vehicle full of people who've never experienced an elephant before. and a scream at the wrong time or a sneeze is definitely going to have a negative impact. You guys can hear just how windy it is. We're downwind of the elephants at the moment, and the wind is just howling across this open area. Ooh, it's actually a little bit unpleasant. I don't really like, I'm not a wind person. It unsettles me for some reason, and I know I'm not the only person that feels that way. Okay, now that they've moved off a little bit and they seem to be distracted by each other, we can sneak a little bit closer. Now we've got a group of males here at the moment, and a good morning to Tammy in New Zealand while we attempt to hide and shelter ourselves from this incredible howling wind. I'm trying to keep my cap on my head. You want to know if it's more common to find elephants in big groups or little groups. Depends on where you are, depends on the time of year. So yesterday we saw a herd or several herds all joined together. It was probably about 50, if not more, elephants in that area. And that's relatively common where they're sort of coming together around a water source. There's not all that much water at the moment in the Sabi Sands or in the greater Kruger Park area. So the herds get a little bit larger. But then in Botswana or in Zambia, you might see herds of 100, 200 elephants moving through an area. It's very area dependent, it's very seasonally dependent, and rainfall dependent. Oh, having a lovely one last trunk full of water before they move off. And the breeding herds consist of females and their offspring and the occasional attendant male. But when you see bachelor herds like this, they will invariably be much smaller than your average breeding herd. So bull elephants come together for a little bit of company, maybe a bit of practice sparring, and then they move off on their own. So a bachelor herd of elephants is a very fluid thing. They come together and then move apart. And these guys are moving off. I've just got a full whiff of elephant bull coming into must. The largest of them is I think either just entering or just leaving his must cycle. That time of a male elephant's, every couple of months they go into must, M-U-S-T-H, where their testosterone levels go through the roof and they get a little bit antsy, let's put it that way. Oh, and we're about to accidentally interrupt somebody's drink stop, which is definitely not what I intended to do. I think we'll change our direction. We'll watch our Ellies move off and then we'll change our plans. It's wonderful to see 3 in a row pan once again with a little bit of water, actually quite a lot of water. Well, they've had a thoroughly enjoyable coffee stop. They've had elephants come and join them. And while our Ellies wander off, yesterday we were treated to a wonderful sighting of a full-grown elephant lying completely flat. But Caleb, good morning, he wanted to know what you're trumpeting at, Ellies. What was that all about? Oh, there's a breeding herd off a little bit further. We must have just missed a breeding herd coming through here. We're not going to try and follow them. They sound upset and it is very, very windy. Sorry, Caleb. I'm just watching what's happening with the drink stop. It's packing up very fast because there's a whole load of elephants coming behind them. You can't really see them behind the trees. There you go. You can see them packing up. All the guests back on the vehicle in a hurry. Happens. Sometimes you're just having a casual coffee stop and something wanders through. I've had lions wander through, elephants, rhino. I think let's give them some space and move around. So Caleb, yes, elephants will sleep lying down, even full-grown elephants, but they won't sleep as long as the babies do. So babies can lie down for up to an hour at a time and have a long nap, rest up during the sort of period of their life where they're doing all of their growth. The adult elephants often will lie on a termite mound or against a tree just to make getting up a little bit easier. And it's more common to see them sleeping standing up. What you'll often see on quarantine, or what we've often seen on quarantine, is big males. They walk up to a marula tree, flop their trunk over their tusks, and they just put their heads on the tree, just sort of rest it there and have a quick doze. One of my favorite things to see is a sleeping elephant. And it generally is dozing. It's not really a heavy sleep for the adult elephants. That being said, I've accidentally walked in on a bull elephant that was fast asleep. He never knew I was there. From the moment I saw him, he was probably about 20 meters away in thick vegetation, and I just stood and watched him sleeping. He was snoring slightly before I moved off. He had no idea. Didn't even stir. So while we circumnavigate the drink stop and head across to the plains of Cheetah Plains, let's find out what Mr. Henry's up to.
Well, we haven't found anything else, everybody. We did sit with that lion for another 5 minutes or so. He did stand up briefly. We thought there was going to be action, but I turned on. It was Brian adjusting his hat. And so the lion then sat down when he realized that there wasn't going to be any action. And so that's all that's going on with him. We're now going to go towards Buffelshoek Dam. The heat is starting to build, and I say that is a relative term. It's certainly not getting hot, but it's getting rather pleasant. So maybe some elephants and some buffalo or something else going to come down to drink at Buffelshoek Dam. We also don't know where Tingana is at this stage. You can hear the wind coming up now. It's a big southeasterly now. The wind has switched to the southeast, and that's the standard direction from which our cold fronts come. So I think we're probably in for a cold front sometime this weekend. Alright, we should be okay now. Shamrock, we haven't heard from you for a while. Welcome back. Lovely to hear from you. You say, do I think that the habituation of animals is going to change the way in which they adapt from an evolutionary perspective to conditions around here? No, I don't. I don't think it's going to make any difference. Remember that there are various debates as to how quickly evolution can happen. But what isn't up for dispute is that it doesn't happen sort of within a couple of 100 years. And so I really don't, it's much too soon to say what effect we would have from a natural selective point of view out here. I mean, if animals were to become, let's say, for example, let's pretend that there was a pride of lions that developed the ability, and I don't mean learned the ability, they had a random genetic mutation that made them use vehicles as ways to hide from potential prey species. So let's say that some lion one day was born with the innate ability to get behind a vehicle, and he realized that he could use a car to sneak up on animals, because if he walked behind the car they couldn't see him, they couldn't smell him, and they couldn't hear him. Well then, yes, that kind of gene would then be perpetuated for certain. But I really don't think that something like that is going to happen. I might be wrong, but unless, only thousands of years will tell us. There's a very strong wind blowing, Brian. No, good grief. Don't fall off the back. Aqua, I think I've heard your question correctly, but it is blowing up a stiff gale out here. You say, which animal, were it to go extinct, would affect tourism the most in the Sabi Sands? Is that correct, Kirsten? Aqua, unquestionably the leopard. The leopard is the species that drives tourism to this area, I think, more than any other. and it is the animal for which the Sabi sand has become most popularly known. And so I think, you know, if you come to the Sabi sand, people in the know realize that that's what they're going to see. They hope to come and take photographs of leopards. Yes, they hope to see everything else as well, but a leopard is the real highlight. So that, to me, would by far and away outweigh any other sort of extinction. I'm not sure why that is the case. I mean, they are magnificent, but I'm not sure why, as human beings, we've ascribed so much more value to something like a leopard than we have to a humble scrub hare, for example. Now, the last time I came past here, we found a scrub hare, and it was in the night, and I felt like the thing had just popped out of its... Oh, no, man. Jamie with zebra.
We seem to have some very upset animals here on the open area of Cheetah Plains, right next to their pan. And that's just because the wind is howling. The elephants are upset, and I think they've probably been chasing the zebra around as well. But it does give you a nice idea as to the way in which a dynamic of a zebra herd functions. So there's our stallion looking off, assuming a very protective role to look after his harem. And then the rest of the females bunching together, a couple of youngish foals. And I think they've deliberately chosen this open area. They have to kind of toss up between bearing the full brunt of an icy wind and also being able to see across large distances. So the zebra know that they could outrun pretty much, as long as they've got a good run up, as long as they've got a good lead, they can outrun pretty much every single predator that's out here. They seem to have decided that the most sensible approach is to stay out in the open and see what they can find. Sorry guys, I think Andrew's trying to call me. Just bear with me 1 second. Andrew, sorry, you're trying to call me? Negative. Just a couple of Hlami and Love around between 3 in a row pan and Cheetah pan. Andrew, where did you leave Tundi? Copy that, thank you. Sorry guys, just chatting, double checking where Andrew left Tundi. He stayed with her a little bit longer than we did. It seems as though she's disappeared into the drainage line around the dam called Djuma Dam. Possibly, quite possibly, looking for somewhere to have her cubs. Kind of like Karula did. Karula did a lot of scoping out before she actually went and gave birth. Now, apart from our breeding herd, or the harem of that stallion, we've also got 3 stallions standing off a little bit away from the herd, wanting to go and have a drink, and also just generally feeling the effects of the wind. You can see it in their body language, just how unsettled they are. Some constant turning of the ears, jumpy movements, jerky movements. Yo, this is intense! VM, we don't even need to start the car. If we play our cards right, I'll just spread my jacket out and we can sail home. Put it in neutral and sail home. Go away, Hood. I'm going to go seek refuge. While I do, James has found one of our other antelope species.
Everybody look at the pretty colours there, the kudu in the woodland. I think it's very pretty indeed. And the kudu are not alone, of course, are they, Brian? No. Who is their friend, Brian?
The impala.
Yes, Ian the impala. Could you show us Ian? Or was Ian behind the bushel? Let us go forward so that we might view Ian as well. This is a horrendous name for an impala. Ian the impala. There he is. Hello, Ian. Ian is with the impala, or at least with the kudu, of course, because he lacks a herd of his own, probably owing to the fact that he has a personality roughly like mine, which means that his own kind do not want to be around him, and so he has sought the refuge of the kudu herd. They will provide him with ears and eyes and nose that a herd of impala might have as well. This is actually really quite fun, because normally what you find is a bull of, say, wildebeest or a buffalo bull or something like that lurking with impala for exactly the same reason. It's very seldom that you find an impala ram lurking around with a herd of other animals. And they're getting on very peaceably. You can see they're not crossed with each other at all. Completely happy and comfortable in each other's presence. Look, Brian. I just found my lens cap, everybody. You'll be all relieved to know I couldn't find it, and I know that all of you were dreadfully, dreadfully worried. But thank you for your concern. I found it now. Look at the wind blowing, light copper colours and greens and yellows and burnt out white sky because of the wind. Who would be a kudu today? Not ideal if you're living in thick bush trying to eat leaves. This is really quite a good sighting, I must say. Hello, Kathy. You want to know if we get sable in this area. Kathy, we don't. We do sometimes, very seldom. There was one seen last year knocking about on the Djuma Dam wall. He was caught on the camera. And then they have seen one around in Karula and Torchwood and Kruger. They share a boundary. And that corner that is their boundary, it's known as Kudu Corner, is an area where sable have been seen once or twice in the last in the last year. So it's highly unlikely that you're going to see sable here. But it's not impossible. I think they're my favourite too, Kathy, so I'd really like to see one as well. Really, that wind is really now quite intimidatingly powerful. Hello, Aqua. A very philosophical question here as we watch the wind stream across the woodland. You say, what is my greatest conservation or ecology concern? Aqua, for this area, it would be the provision of artificial water, which I think is having a detrimental effect on the landscape. Do I think it's going to have a long-term, dreadful effect on this area? No, I don't, because I think humans will be gone from here in a couple of 100 years and the land use will have changed so much that it won't really matter. Worldwide, I think it has to be the growth of human population and our astounding need to consume, and the way that we've set ourselves up economically such that our economy would collapse unless we increased consumption. We hear this constant refrain of economic growth and how we have to have economic growth, and I would say that economic growth, to quote, I think it was E.O. Wilson, the great American ecologist. I think E.O. Wilson said that economic growth was the greatest threat to the world's environment, and I would have to agree with him. I've no doubt there are thousands who would say that's absolute nonsense, but unfortunately with economic growth comes increased consumption, and increased consumption brings with it inevitably greater strains on our natural world. Right, that was a wonderful antelope sighting with a beautiful question. Thank you very much for that question, Aqua. We're going to ease our way towards Biffle's Hook Dam now, see what's there. And I'm just going to let Kirsten know. Oh, here we go. Let's go across to Jamie now. We're going to lose signal again here. Let's see what she's doing on Cheetah Plains.
Here's here's a word of advice. The plains on Cheetah Plains is not really the place to be on a windy day. I'm about to be blown away. I can't really hear anything. I definitely can't really see anything. And all in all, it makes for a rather tricky guiding experience. Although I've just been told by one of the Cheetah guides that there are bush babies in a tree. So we'll probably go and have a look at them once we've checked the boundary for any of the cheetah that might be here. Those cheetah brothers that we often see. And welcome to Sarah in Australia on our windy day. You were wondering whether or not it's very dry where we are. The answer is yes, it is completely dry, apart from a couple of the dams that are pumped from underground water. So through human intervention to put a little bit of water into the area. We are in the grips of probably what's been labelled as the worst drought in the last 100 or so years. So it really is severely lacking in water. There's absolutely no grass. I was thinking about the fact that a year ago when I started working on Djuma, Twin Dams was full, Treehouse Dam was full. So this same time of year, those dams are now completely empty. It's only Buffelshoek Dam that's got a little bit of water, and that's already on its way out. So the water that we just saw earlier with the elephants around them, that's pumped up from underneath the ground. Very, very dry. So for animals, the zebra having a bit of a fight. So for the animals, particularly the herbivores, times are tough. For the predators, it doesn't really get better for them. The animals are forced around limited water supplies, limited food supplies. And basically, if a pride of lion wants to, can hang about around a waterhole and essentially just wait for the prey to come to them. I'm trying to sort of hide my microphone in my jersey so it doesn't sound so terrible. And while we're looking at our zebbies, these are Birchals, or as they are now known, plains zebra, the only species that we get in this area. But MJ is asking about the difference between our zebra and the mountain zebra. Oh, is there going to be another fight? Shame, these animals are so stressed. Stampede! As soon as one of them panics, they all go, just in case. You know, it doesn't really pay not if one zebra catches wind of something, it doesn't pay to ignore it. Oh, now we're going back the other way. Back the other way, everybody back the other way. Oh, shame. It's very stressful being a zebra. Sorry, MJ. Difference between our plain zebra, or our Birchall zebra, and the mountain zebra of the Cape area. The mountain zebra, of course, being far more, this is so unpleasant, far more endangered than our plain zebra. The biggest difference, or the most obvious difference, is the mountain zebra have black and white stripes. It's perfectly clear where the division is. In our plains, or our Birchall zebra, there's a thin stripe known as a shadow stripe, particularly around the rump. It's kind of like a brownish stripe in between the two black ones. That's one of the big differences. The other is that the stripes do not extend all the way down to the middle of the stomach in a mountain zebra, whereas in a plain zebra, the stripes go right down. Right, I've had it, I'm gone. It's time for us to go. I feel like I'm about to blow away. Let's just have one quick look at our zebra with our stripes. Have a look carefully as they pass behind the trees, and you'll see what I mean about the shadow stripes between the black stripes and the stripes on the belly going all the way down and meeting in the middle. So in a mountain zebra, they don't have those shadow stripes, those thin stripes, and their stripes stop at sort of their chest or at their ribs. No! Oh gosh, I don't even think there's any point to wearing it. Let's just go. I have to start the car first. That's how driving works. Oh goodness. Now, this wind is actually not that unusual for this time of year, but Greg in Michigan, where I believe you do get the odd snowfall, I believe, you were wondering whether or not we ever get snow here. We don't. We're actually kept relatively sheltered by the ring of the Drakensberg Mountains. So the low veld, it hardly ever snows. South Africa does get snow. So the Eastern Cape area, the Natal area, up in the Drakensberg Mountains, they get a great deal of snow during the winter. We even have a couple of seasonal ski resorts known as Tiffindale around the Rhodes area. So the mountains close to Lesotho. Yes, they get snow, but we definitely don't. If it snows in the low veld, then we have a major climate problem on our hands. And even Johannesburg has had a couple of inches of snow over the last few years, up in the what we call the high veld as opposed to the low veld. So Johannesburg is one of the highest in terms of altitude cities in the world. Let's go see these bush babies. I want to see where they are, hiding in this tree somewhere. Oh, there. That's not a bush baby, that's a squirrel. Am I completely mad? No, that's a squirrel. It's in the top of the tree. Sorry, that doesn't really help you. You got it. That's definitely not a bush baby, that's a squirrel. There he is, up to the right. In the right-hand corner. There he is, clinging on for dear life. No, that's definitely not a bush baby. I'm a guide and I know these things. Let's just see, this is the tree that we were told the bush babies are in. Shames, clinging on for dear life, trying to shelter from the wind. Poor thing. I know the feeling, little squirrel. I was reliably informed that there are bush babies in this tree somewhere. They might have blown away though. They're so fluffy they might just have blown up into the air. Okay. Wim, do you see a bush baby? I don't see a bush baby either. I'm going somewhere that's less open. Try and put my hat back on my head. Okay, let's go and get back to somewhere a bit more sheltered because this is getting ridiculous. While we drive along past Cheetah Plains, one of the last times I saw Thandi was outside one of the guest rooms where she had killed a baby bushbuck. Now, Miss, you were wondering about that, whether or not any of the animals come close to or right up to a guest room at the lodges or into the lodges. Yes, all the time. Karula famously at one point denned her cubs underneath the deck of one of the guest rooms at Vuyatela on Djuma, a place where you could quite happily book a holiday and stay at. The elephants come through on a regular basis. A lot of lodges have a fence or an elephant wire, but that doesn't always stop them. It's important to remember out here that fences are not they're not a guarantee for any animal. Any animal can get past a fence if they want to, if they choose to. Leopards particularly just hop over. Nyala and warthog tend to be the general game species that like to inhabit lodges, and you very often also get bush babies and genets that move in and take advantage. And then of course there's the more difficult to manage and to deal with. No, it's actually not that difficult to manage, but once it's happened it's difficult, and that's monkeys and baboons. So they can become very naughty and they do start to wander about lodges, and that's usually if the dustbins and food are not properly looked after and packed away every evening and during the day. So if they find that they have access to food, they learn very quickly that that is the way forward. And that, of course, is one of the big reasons behind the tragic situation that occurred in the Kruger National Park recently. And an important reminder, what we were saying about fences, a fence does not keep an animal out, particularly a hyena. And one poor young boy in the Crocodile Bridge camp found that out to his peril. And that's because people feed, guests come to the Kruger Park lodges and they throw bones from their barbecues or their braais, as we call them in South Africa, to the animals outside, because it's wonderful to see a hyena right up close to the fence. And hyenas are smart, just like every animal. They learn that that is the way to, that's where they must go to find food. But yes, animals do come through. We've got a whole range of species of birds that come and visit us. Nyala, bushbuck. And that for me is one of the best things about working out here. When you can wake up in the morning, look out of your window and see an elephant quietly feeding. Wiem's had 2 bushbuck living outside his room for a considerable period of time. And an elephant, apparently. A very interesting question, just on a more general topic. For all of us that have worked as safari guides over the last few years, James Richards, good morning. You were wondering what is the most common misconception about being a safari guide? I think probably perhaps one of the biggest misconceptions is that you take the job if you love animals and don't like people, because it is very much a people-based job as well, if not even more so than an animal-based job, because it's our passion is to share what we love with other people, and that's where the joy of guiding comes from. But if you don't like people, it makes life very, very difficult, because you spend, when you've got a number of guests with you for a couple of days, you're going to spend pretty much all of your time with them, from the morning game drive to sitting breakfast with them. You might get an hour or 2 off in the afternoon if you're lucky, maybe not in winter, you might have to take them for a walk. Then you go out in the afternoon and then you host dinner afterwards and sit with them until, depending on the lodge itself, you sit with them until they want to go to bed. So it's very much a people-based job as well. Of course, what we do is ever so slightly different, because we speak to a camera, but at the same time we speak to a much larger audience around the world, which is why your questions and your comments are so incredibly valued, because I found it very strange in the beginning to not have people on the back. No, I mean, obviously we've got the cameraman, we've got Wiem on the back, but I found it a very strange experience initially, until I got used to the idea of questions and comments coming through and actually having a conversation in that way. That leaf nearly smacked me in the face. That's probably one of the most common misconceptions, James. There's quite a few others. One is that we just drive. That's one of the more negative of them, is that we're basically a glorified taxi driver. All we do is drive around and take guests to different places, and that's not, of course, what it is. And I had a few of those comments when I first went into guiding from people that I knew, people that were familiar to me throughout my childhood and my teenage years, and they're all sort of, some of them, just one or two, but some of them basically called me a glorified taxi driver. And that's one of the common misconceptions as well, because that's not at all what we do. There's a lot of thinking and a lot of thought that goes into conducting a game drive. Trying to escape this wind doesn't seem to get any better. One day I'm going to see a leopard on this. I've tracked Tundi here before, but it was on a day very similar to today, and this is not a day that you want to be walking in the bush. But one day there's going to be a leopard there. Ooh. Very warm welcome to Justin on the subject of guiding and safari guiding. He wants to know what is something that tourists do that absolutely infuriates us. You'll find each and every one of us has a pet peeve. I'm trying to think what mine would be. I've got used to most of the... I think perhaps... Oh, it's such a difficult one to answer, Justin, because a lot of it doesn't come from a malignant place within a tourist. It's just a position of pure ignorance. But I think sometimes the judgment that's bestowed by tourists when they come and they see something in terms of conservation practice that they can't fully understand, unless you've worked in this industry for many years, you don't ever fully, and even then you don't fully understand the intricacies of conservation and trying to do your absolute best. I think my other pet peeve maybe is asking a question and then not listening to the answer. It's not, you don't often get guests like that, but they do occasionally happen. They ask you something and then they're already thinking about the next question that they can ask you, so they don't listen to the answer anyway, and it kind of feels a little bit like a waste of time. So those might be two of my pet peeves. You'll probably find James has something completely different. Brent probably has something completely different. We all have things that we love and hate in terms of this kind of job. There's one other thing that bugs me, but it's not really a tourist fault. They've been misled completely. It's the idea that by cuddling and petting and cooing over captive wild animals, you're contributing in some way to their rehabilitation. And I'm talking sort of in situations like with lion cub breeding. And it irritates me that people don't research necessarily. They want to go and do good. They really want to go and help the animals, but they don't really necessarily put in the research, because ultimately what they want to do is have pictures of themselves taken with lion cubs. It's a bit of a generalization. I have a marvelous surprise for you, something that I'm sure will make your day. I'm going to not tell you what it is. I'm going to let James show you.
Well, everybody, where there is death, there is life, and there is death in the tree there that you can see. And it was made by Karula, the queen. Not found by us. I would love to claim some kind of credit for this. This is entirely the work of Herbert, who's just called us in here, and he's found these three beautiful leopards. Isn't that special? There she is, the youngsters are around her on the ground here somewhere. And what an amazing joy this is. Brian, I still can't see the kill. Have I gone blind? In the big Scotia tree there.
On the right-hand fork.
On the right-hand fork. I was going to try and discover what she's killed. Ah, yes, I'm unsighted. I can see now why I couldn't see it. It looks like yet another duiker has met its end. It looks like Georgie boy to the left there. Charlotte's just gone off into the bushes to the right-hand side of your screen. Ah, marvellous. What a wonderful way to complete our drive. Let me just sneak a little bit forward. Yeah, I just want to sneak slightly forward. Well, I'm going to wait for Herbert to move out first, then we'll move. It is windy, so the noises and things will probably make them a little edgy. Just wonderful. And she's not edgy in the slightest, of course, completely confident. And I'm pretty sure that's George, the 3-3 spot pattern. She is 3-4, like her mum. He's getting much more muscly around his jaws these days, as old George. Let me sneak a little bit forward. I can see Charlotte. And Anna-Marie, you're wondering if I notice a difference in the smell between lions and leopards. Anna-Marie, no, I don't. I don't notice a difference at all. I don't think they smell of anything to me. I've no doubt they smell of a lot to their prey species, but to me I don't smell them at all. Hyenas sometimes are a bit niffy. Hyenas are sometimes massively niffy. But I don't find that lions and leopards, unless they're lying around a carcass, are smelly at all. And whether or not they smell different to their prey species, I don't know. Hello Jake in the United Kingdom, you want to know where on Djuma Karula is. Well, here comes Charlotte. Jake, if you've got a Google Earth map, you can probably see... Oh look, she's going up the tree. Look at this. Look. What a clever girl. And here comes George. There's obviously some piece of the kill underneath there where they've been. That's fantastic. Fantastic stuff. And the wind is absolutely howling here. So if you've got a Google Earth map, Jake, what you do is you can find the road names actually, and Treehouse Dam is about 150 meters to the left of your screen, so to the west of our position. We're on the drainage line that leads out of Treehouse Dam. Savage's Track to the north of this drainage line, Treehouse Dam to the right of our drainage line. And if you don't have the road names, which you should be able to find there, if you can't, then we are basically in the middle southern section of Djuma, middle to southwest section. Now what I'm going to do just for our last few minutes is move a little bit so that we can possibly see these cubbies eating. And again, I know we had that, Andrew Causa posted that wonderful video of the two cubs playing with each other, but again we find them separated here. And what is this fascinating behavior that he's engaging in here? George down there is basically burying things. He's doing what leopards do. They often bury the stomach contents of whatever it is that's been killed. And that's what he was doing there. He seemed to be doing some kind of burying maneuver. She's up in the tree. That is definitely yet another hapless duiker. Aaron, you say cat a day once again. Cat a day is living up to its name. It certainly is, isn't it? What a day. Did you see her hiss at him there? She definitely gave him a nasty little growl as he looked up at the tree. Now look at this. He's trying. He's thinking about going up the tree. No, he's not. He's just laying down at the base. And he's not going up the tree at the moment. He thought better of incurring the wrath of Princess Charlotte. Wonderful luck we've had today. And Cat in Tampa, you say George is a little roly-poly. I'm not sure what you mean by that, but I can kind of get the idea. She is very hungry. Very hungry indeed. Again. Feeding these two I don't think is any mean feat. And old Georgie boy looks on from the floor, slightly forlornly up into the tree. What a perfect way to end our little drive. Let me just confirm the spot patterns. Look how strong she is. Absolutely incredible. So she's actually got 4 spots on her left. So she's 4-3, not 3-4 like her mum. And her 4th spot is above the other 3. Now if you don't know what I'm talking about the unique spot patterns that occur underneath the noses of these leopards, and that's often the best way of identifying them. This is just unbelievable, eh? What a sighting. And the wind is howling all around, and I'm sure part of the reason this duiker met its end is the strength of this wind. I drove past here yesterday. I looked into this tree very carefully, and I don't think this was here. I think this was killed last night sometime. This was the one road that we didn't drive this morning around this area. Right, well the prospects for the afternoon are very good. I've no doubt Jamie or I will come and spend a substantial amount of the afternoon here. And we'll be out before, of course, anyone else gets mobile. So that will be the plan for the afternoon. We're going to have to love you and leave you here on Catterday from the middle of Djuma. Big thanks to Kirsten Macksmith in the final control, terrifying woman that she is, being helped, I think, by Chelsea Byrne this morning. A big thanks to Jamie Patterson for finding the other leopard on the other part of the reserve. And Brian, of course, to you and your suited thumb, well done. Mostly to all of you, especially for your questions other than about exactly what we're seeing. We've had some wonderful conversations today. Thanks for those. We'll see you later at 3 o'clock this afternoon. Bye-bye.